Brazil's balancing act, reconciling the demands of economic development, environmental protection, and indigenous rights. My name is Lee Swigert, and I direct the programs in International Justice and Society here at Brandeis' International Center for Ethics, Justice, and Public Life. And we are delighted to be partnering with the International Business School for the first time on a major program. And this is a topic that brings together a lot of our common interests. It's interesting to think back about the genesis of this program. It really started about a little more than a year ago, when our center was holding its 2012 Brandeis Institute for International Judges, which is an event that brings together judges who serve on international courts and tribunals from around the globe. And one of the sessions that we organized was on the topic of the emerging body of law known as Indigenous Rights Law. It is very new, and it's really not very well known, even by people who are international lawyers and judges. And there's lots of questions about how this body of law intersects with human rights law, because it's a body of law that really has to do with collections of people, collectivities of people, and not just the rights that human beings as individuals are seen to have. And when we came back from this Brandeis Institute for International Judges, we happened to have a conversation with Dean Bruce Maggot of the International Business School, and started talking about indigenous rights and how this is an issue that has taken on a lot of importance in Brazil, with the kinds of conflicts it is having between environmental protection, economic development, and the rights of the people who have traditionally lived in large areas of Brazil that are of very deep interest for both those in business and those who are looking to save the environment and safeguard the environment. So the genesis of this is that we started thinking about how we could bring together a group of people who could look at these intersecting interests across these fields, and we have pulled together a stellar group of panelists for you today. I am not going to go into details. Bruce Maggot will do that in just a moment. But I would like to tell you about how today's event is going to work. Dean Maggot will make some introductory remarks. Our 5 panelists, whose bios you can read in the program, will come up and individually make their remarks. There'll be a short break. And then afterward, there will be a panel discussion where our panelists will be in discussion with one another, and then there will be also a period of audience participation for Q&A. So with no further delay, I am very pleased to introduce Bruce Maggot, the Dean of the International Business School here at Brandeis, who himself has a long experience in Brazil and in Latin America more generally. So, Dean Maggot.
Well, I'm very pleased to see everybody here, and I know the students are here because they want to be here, not because it's a mandatory class, so I'm even more pleased about that. Don't tell me if it's anything different. So let me briefly start out and say how pleased I am to be partnering, and this is really what makes a Brandeis University unique. Different spectrums, if you will, of the university coming together on a project. And as you'll see when we're talking, really it's a combined effort of business, public sector, and civic society to deal with the challenges that we're facing, and Brazil is just a wonderful example. Because some of you are undergraduates here, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my personal odyssey. My first instance knowing Brazil was actually crossing over the Brazilian border from Venezuela. The Amazon does touch on Venezuela as well, and that was in the late 70s, and actually meeting an indigenous tribe and seeing the beauty and the fury of the Amazon and some of the people. And I later moved to Brazil. I showed some of the people my tarjeta de extranjera that had to legally get into the country. And when I lived in Brazil, Brazil was called, if you will, in the Spanish term, the land of tomorrow. It was a country that was viewed as beautiful and high potential, minerals, natural resources, wonderful people, but had not really realized its full potential. Along the way, and our speakers will get into this, the economy was transformed. It's now the 6th largest economy in the world, which is important for everybody. But it also has the Amazon, which many people call the lung of our world. And so the importance of the Amazon to the environment and to the world, so not only an economic power, but also the importance of the Amazon and the rainforest. And as Brazil has become more pronounced on the international stage and assumed a greater role in the global economy, I think the eyes of the world have turned toward Brazil and how Brazil has to balance the need for economic development and social progress and concern for the environment and the rights of the indigenous population. It's a balancing act. And you know, we used to use this term that we would call economic growth. But today, it's not just about how you grow an economy, but the social implications, making sure that you can get the all stratas of the population engaged and involved. And so in this discussion, we're going to talk about the intersection and how you look at those aspects. And we're going to have an amazing group of speakers looking at it from their vantage point. I was going to introduce each speaker with a long bio, but I think in order to keep us on time, with the speaker's permission, if you don't mind, there is a program and the information's in there, and so I'll just briefly introduce by maybe name and title of the speakers, and if they want to spend the first 3 minutes of their topic telling us more about them, they can, or hopefully dive right into the topic. But our speakers, in order of presentation, I believe.
Did you want to do anything?
Okay, well, we can go to the map just for a minute.
Which one?
Okay, so let's go to the map for a minute. All right, real crash course, because I said I thought this was important. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew where Brazil was in terms of in the Western Hemisphere. And I also wanted to point out that Brazil is large relative to other countries. So we've got that one right. And then the next slide shows Brazil. And if I have this right, my Brazil experts can tell me the Amazon region itself accounts for about 40% of the landmass of Brazil. So it's a really significant portion of Brazil. So that was my quiz, if you will. So we can move on now. So now in terms of the speakers, we know who I am. So in order of the speakers, we have Dr. Bjorn Maybury Lewis, and he's the Executive Director of the Cambridge Institute for Brazilian Studies, and that's an NGO that was just established in late 2011, dedicated to the dissemination of objective, nonpartisan, research-based information on Brazil and Brazil-U.S. relations. He holds the requisite PhD and MA, and he's taught at a number of prestigious universities in the United States and Brazil, and I'll leave it at that. He can tell you a little bit more about himself. Then we have Dr. Daniel Luiz Glazer, and he's the Vice President and the Executive Board Member of a very powerful bank in Brazil, Itaú BBA, excuse me, the wholesale investment and institutional treasury banking arm of Itaú Unibanco Grupo, and he has a long and distinguished career working as an economist, has held prominent positions in the private sector, the Central Bank of Brazil, the International Monetary Fund. He's been an assistant professor of economics, and he has a BA in economics and an MA in economics and a PhD in economics, and so he's a bona fide economist, both in terms of the intellectual rigor and practitioner expertise. And then we have Professor Cristina Espinosa, a social scientist and anthropologist with a BA from Universidad Católica del Peru, a PhD from the University of Florida, 25 years experience as a researcher, program manager in sustainable development with social groups as diverse as goat herders, poor farmers in the Andes and the Amazon, migrant rural workers, and a lot of professional experience with NGOs, one that she co-founded, and areas such as conservation as well. And she's teaching a course teaching courses actually in the MA program in Sustainable International Development at the Heller School. So she's our Heller School representative, and she's the author of 3 books. I don't know if you brought them for autographs or not, but we can do that some other time. Then moving right along, we have Dr. Moyes Nino Silva, and he's a Brazilian-born anthropologist, and he's currently a postdoc fellow at Harvard University and a lecturer in anthropology and international and global studies at Brandeis University, teaching a course right now that I believe some of you are taking. He graduated with a BA degree in international relations from the University of Brasilia, holds a Master of Science in Social Anthropology from the London Business School, and a PhD in Social Anthropology. And then if that's not enough, we have another panelist, Mr. Fernando Ribeiro Delgado, lecturer on law and a clinical instructor at the International Human Rights Clinic at Harvard Law School. He holds a JD from Harvard Law School and an AB in Public and International Affairs from Princeton University's Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs. He's been involved in a specialist on inter-American human rights system. His work goes beyond academia into fact-finding. He's worked as a co-counsel in prisoners' rights, served as a global human rights fellow, and just an array of activities related to this area. So the difficult part is when you try to have a topic like this that weaves together so many subjects, you bring in so many specialists that have so much to say, and so I apologize for butchering the introductions, but I really wanted to give everybody a chance to speak and make sure that we have lots of participation from the audience. So I believe 1 minute over, but we're pretty much on schedule, and we're going to begin with the first presentation. Thank you very much.